Something broke a hole at the bottom of the egg shell, probably sucked out the egg and then stuck it on top of the cypress knee. I have been a paranormal investigator for over 30 years. And so for me, it started out with ghost hunting, typical ghost hunting, doing that for a while. And then it evolved into aliens and UFOs. So, I would go out with my friends and we would do the sky watches and stuff, which we still do, you know. And some of those friends who I was doing the UFO stuff with, they were also into Bigfoot. And I was kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure about this. And so, but we would go out in the woods together. We would go to Ocala National Forest, which is in the northern central part of the state. And, but it's a hot spot. So, the three of us, we would just go and, take a look around and we would see some strange things like strange breaks and stuff like that. And so one time we went camping with a bunch of people. There was probably like 12 of us. And we were camping out in the Ocala National Forest, coldest night of the year, and sometime in January, about 4 years ago. And it was like 1:30 in the morning. People are talking, sitting around the campfire, blah, blah, blah. I was standing off to the side with a friend of mine and another guy. And it was then that we heard a incredible, long, lengthy Bigfoot howl, vocalization. And we just looked at each other like, what was that? And we're like, oh my God, that's a freaking Bigfoot. And so that was the point that I got definitely hooked. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to check this out. I got to investigate this. I want to see, I want to have a Bigfoot sighting. And so that's how I got into it. And so we would keep going out every once in a while to Ocala National Forest because where I'm at, I'm in Central Florida in the Tampa area. It's about a 2-hour drive to the Ocala National Forest. And so COVID hit, right? So in March 2020, the Forest Service shut down all the forests and parks and everything because of COVID. They didn't have, people working, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, I got furloughed from my position, my job. So I had all this time, available to me. So I don't know, it was probably like 2 months later that the forest department opened everything back up again. And so me and my friends were like, come on, let's go. We're going to go out to the Ocala National Forest. We're going to see what's going on out there. And we're going to look for footprints, whatever. So we dash over there. And, we go down this one particular trail that's our favorite. We've had some strange stuff that's happened on this trail. It's not very dense at all. You could see through the trees and everything. But over time, in the past few years, I found structures out there. And, they'll appear for a while and then they'll disappear as though they've been taken down. So anyway, we went out there down our favorite trail and we're looking around and we're like, we saw a black bear walking down the middle of the road that we were on because, wildlife wasn't used to vehicles being around. So they were just, black bears just cruising down the road. So we didn't see anything in particular. So we left. We went back a week later. What happened was we went to go down the trail again. This time there was 5 trees that were broken, and they were laid one after the other across the trail. And, these trees are probably about, 6-7 inches in diameter. So they're not small itty bitty trees, but there's 5 of them that have been broken, freshly broken, laid one after the other. And then there was a little tiny tree off to the side that was bent all the way over the trail and was secured underneath one of those broken trees. And over on the left-hand side, before you get to these broken trees laying on the path, was a big X structure. So within 1 week of us going there, things dramatically changed. And we definitely got the impression that, oh my God, he doesn't want humans. They don't want humans around. They're blocking the path, like, get out, go away, stay away, because again, the forest has been closed for 2 months. So all of a sudden humans are showing back up. I guess they got, they noticed us or something, and something broke 5 trees and laid it across the path. And that was incredibly amazing, incredibly amazing. So that's really what started me along this journey. And so at that point, I was posting the stuff I was finding on my own personal Facebook page. And I decided, I only had like my handful of friends who were even interested in Bigfoot at all. And so I was like, that's just not putting that kind of stuff on my personal page where I have employers looking at my personal page, just wasn't the right place for me to do that. So then I started looking on Facebook, trying to find a research, group or something on Facebook that was specifically about Florida, so I could post my things, right? And I couldn't find anything that I really liked at the time, which was about 2.5 years ago. And it was then that I decided to start my own Facebook group, and it's called the Mid-Florida Bigfoot Research Group. We have well over 4,000 group members, probably at least 80-85% of the group members do live in Florida, which is very encouraging. That's exactly what I wanted the group to be about. I want it to be, mostly Florida researchers who are going out in the woods. I want them to have a safe place where they can, post the things they find so they can share, everything with all of us. It's just intriguing to see the different kind of things that are out there in the woods. And for instance,
tell me about some of those things out there in the woods. Some of the things, you've been doing this a while, and it sounds like you're pretty devoted and boots on the ground kind of investigation. So give me some of the experiences you've had out there and some of the things you've found out there.
Yeah. So there's just so many things that being a paranormal investigator, you tend to be more open-minded about things. I think you become more observant about things. So Ocala National Forest, that same trail, probably a year later, we were walking down the trail, me and my 2 friends, and it was kind of a breezy day. And like I said, it's not a dense forest at all. So we were walking back to the car down the path, the trail, and we can hear like something, I could hear something walking next to us. It seemed to, I could just hear the crunch, crunch, like something bipedal or whatever walking next to me. probably about 10, 15 feet away from me. But I kept looking over. I couldn't see anything. There was nothing there. And I just kept hearing it. And after a while, I was just like, after a few minutes, I was like, I just said to my friends, I said, I don't know about you. I said, but this is going to sound weird, but I swear I'm hearing something walk right alongside of us. And my friend said the exact same thing. They said, to the left, right? And I said, yes, it's to the left. And they said, we heard it too. So that confirmed what it was that we heard. Now we couldn't see anything. This is daytime. We kept looking. Nothing was there, but something, it sounded like something walking with us. So that was one of the strange things. We have so many weird things that we've experienced out there. One of the things at our gifting site in Pasco County, it's an undisclosed area that we do a lot of research in, and we also have a gifting area there. I think I just said that. So one time, part of the property I think is owned by the county, and somebody has set up like a chicken coop out there, and it's really nice, well-made chicken coop. And one day we go out to our gifting site, and there's a bunch of cypress knees, which are, like baby cypress trees growing, but they look like just these spears sticking up out of the ground. And right at our gifting area, there was a eggshell that was mounted on top of one of the cypress knees. And team member Ruby, Ruby Joe Brew, she saw it, and she's like, what's this? And we're like, I don't know. So the eggshell, kind of like something broke a hole at the bottom of the egg shell, probably sucked out the egg and then stuck it on top of the cypress knee. And how ironic is it that it's right exactly where our gifting area is. Now, the chicken coop to the gifting area is at least 100 yards away. So it's not super close. Yes, could it be a raccoon? Sure. However, I find it hard to believe that a raccoon is going to get an egg, climb over the fence, walk all the way over to our gifting area, eat the egg out of the eggshell, and then proceed to place it on top of a cypress knee. You can't explain that. In the same area, about a month and a half ago, we noticed that the fence in the area has been probably about, I don't know, 30, 40 feet of this fence has been knocked down, pressed down. What's interesting about that, 2 of the galvanized steel poles where the barbed wire connects to has been totally bent over. So something with incredible strength bent the galvanized steel barbed wire portion of the fence down, kind of like so it wouldn't be in the way, so that something could get over the fence easier without dealing with the barbed wire. There's no trucks that can get back there. There was no big tree that was knocked down. We just can't explain it. But there's also a new game trail now where the fence has been pushed down. You could see there's a definite game trail that is now there. And again, that's by our gifting site area. Other things that are kind of maybe paranormal that we've encountered out there is one night we were doing a investigation in the Green Swamp. Me and my team, we brought a bunch of chairs we had our night vision cameras, we had thermals. Each of us had a piece of equipment. And so we just kind of like sat in a specific spot where we've had strange things happen out there. And so we were just kind of like sitting pointed a different direction, but we were, you know, on the lookout, trying to see what we could find out there, right? And one of the strange things, two of the strange things were a little tiny stick was thrown right in front of one of my team members' cameras. And so he picked it up on his camera. You could see this little stick. We thought it was maybe a bone, maybe 4 inches long, goes flying across the screen. You can hear it hit his backpack, and then you can hear it hit the ground. Now, again, we have thermal cameras. We have night vision. We're not seeing anything. So what threw this little tiny stick at us without us seeing what it was? You know, you can't explain it. We've also had a figure, not a shadow figure. It's like somebody standing behind me on night vision. And we're like, who the heck is this? But it would look like a human. I'm not saying it was a Bigfoot or anything, but it looked like a human. Maybe like kind of had a look of like an old Civil War soldier or something, but it was like right over my shoulder. And because I was talking to it, I was like, okay, if there's anybody here, can you, you know, say something? Can you show yourself? Blah, 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 blah. And sure enough, he shows up in the camera. But anyway, we are not a woo-woo, you know, Bigfoot group. You know, we are not looking for paranormal, you know, evidence. We're looking for Bigfoot evidence, but paranormal things do happen out there, which is just amazing to me. And, you know, I don't have any explanation for it, but, you know, it does happen out there.
So what are the most prominent things? First of all, has anyone in your group, when you've been out investigating, actually had a sighting of one?
Yes, team member Mike Agler. I know you interviewed him a few days ago. He has had multiple sightings in different areas. He's very sensitive. He's very good at picking out places for us to investigate. He just gets these feelings about things. He has been hit with infrasound in the past, probably at least 2 or 3 times. So he has had physical sighting. I have not. I've only had the incredible vocalization, which it sounded like what people call the classic Ohio vocalization. It was just long and loud, maybe a quarter mile away from us, not too far. I think there was a couple little lakes out there. I think it was probably around that area. And so I've had that experience, but I've had everything else except for a actual physical sighting. You know, I found footprints, asterisk structures, teepees, X structures, strange glyphs, you know, just various things. One of the recent things was I found a fresh hog print that had a little stick shoved in it. And I'm like, okay, how is that possible? This is a fresh print in the mud that has a stick about 12 inches long shoved in the hog print. I don't know what that's about. So as far as Ruby, team member Ruby Jo Brew, she has always, she's like a multi-generation, her family has always been, around the swamp, living by the swamp. So she's very good with identifying wildlife, plant life, very detail oriented. So she has not had a physical sighting, but as a kid, now that she's into Bigfoot, Bigfoot research, she's starting to think that, this could explain what happened when I was a kid, when she had specific, things happen to her that she was like, I don't know what that is, or didn't care to know. But since doing Bigfoot research, she's like, that very well could be what happened to me. And team member Chris Aguilar, he's new to our group and he's a skeptic. He's never had any kind of experience that he knows of. He's from Ohio. And but I think he's starting to think the same thing, is that, as a kid, he may have had some experiences that he didn't realize were related to Bigfoot.
Do you have things like the orbs and the craft and that sort of thing around Bigfoot, the electrical phenomena? Is all of that happening out there?
Yes, not all the time. I did a investigation in December with a couple friends who are also associate team members, and that is Dr. Bill Hewitt. He's a cryptozoologist, and Bettina Layer, and they live down in the Miami area. And so what we did was we planned a week-long investigation on the east side of Lake Okeechobee, which is, there's 3 preserves, wildlife management areas. One's called Dupuy, the other's called Hungry Land, and the other one is James Corbett. And they're all connected together. And there's been Bigfoot or Skunk Ape sightings there. And so we did that. And the orbs. So at night, we were staying around Dupuy. And so Dupuy has some campgrounds, very large campgrounds. They're like family group campgrounds. Nobody was staying there during that week. So at night, we would all go to the campground area, pitch black, set up our equipment. And again, each of us is facing a different way. And we have our thermals and night vision, we've got it all. We're just keeping very quiet, and we're just, checking out what's out there, And so I have a thermal camera monocular, and they're a lot of fun to use. But when you're looking at it through it at night, it really dilates your eye. So I can't look at it, for very long. I just, scan the trees and I'm looking around, and then I have to put it down and let my eye get adjusted to the darkness. So here I am, I'm just sitting on a picnic table, looking one particular way. I'm looking right at a particular bunch of trees, and it's pitch black. So I'm just sitting there and I'm just looking at this tree. All of a sudden, this huge orb, bam, it just shows up, and it just flashes like somebody was taking your photograph with an old Kodak camera with a flash bulb. It was huge. The orb was bigger than a basketball, and it was right in the middle of the canopy, in front of the tree, right in the middle of the canopy, exactly where I was looking. And I was like, whoa, what is that? This huge orb. Now, mind you, there were no fireflies that night. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So it went from being this giant orb, flash right exactly where I was looking. Then it started moving to the left. But when it was moving to the left, it was smaller, about the size of like a softball. So it would just go and flash, and it would just skip down, flash, skip down. It just kept going to the left. And at this point, Bettina came over and she was watching it too. So it was her and I were both watching this, orb going to the left. And then it disappeared behind a bunch of bushes. And we're like, where did it go? Where did it go? And something comes out on the left-hand side of the bushes, but it looked like a green firefly. One. And I was like, that's odd. We go from a white orb, and then what pops out on the left-hand side is what looks like a little green firefly. And then it flies right towards me. And I was talking to it, and I'm like, oh, look at the fire, look at our little friends coming to us. And I'm thinking, that's odd. I've never had a firefly come directly at me. So it came right at us, probably 3 feet away. And then it flew right over my right shoulder, and disappeared, vanished. That was it. And we were like, what the heck? Where did it go? So again, no fireflies seen that night, except for that one thing. And I don't know. I don't know if I just get the feeling that had something to do with Bigfoot, and that it somehow maybe changed, into this little green, what looked like a firefly. I know that sounds crazy.
There are some people that really do think that Bigfoot can turn into an orb, and an orb can turn into a Bigfoot. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that too. And I've heard that about aliens as well. And I know I am more of the flesh and blood, it's a hominid kind of creature thing. Until I see that happen, I just kind of like keep it in the back of my head, but I'm not looking for that. But if it happens, it happens, right? And I have a friend who used to work for MUFON, and she was a mutilation expert in the Midwest. And so, whenever there was some kind of mutilation going on, she'd have to go out and interview the eyewitnesses. And she's had many stories from eyewitnesses who said that they saw an alien and then poof, it turned into an orb and floated away, or vice versa. They saw an orb, poof, it turned into an alien and he walked on. So I have heard that about aliens. Don't know about Bigfoot, but we'll see. We'll see what happens out there.
Well, there's certainly a lot of reports of them cloaking or appearing and disappearing. I interviewed a lot of people that have had experiences with that. Has anyone in your group ever had that experience?
Cloaking. Maybe. Like, I know that on a couple other night investigations, we have seen like an arm come around a tree, but there's nothing there. Whether it's cloaking, or some people say that the Bigfoot will get down on all fours and run off. And in Florida, the majority of our swamps and woods have palmetto palms that are about 3-4 feet tall. So it's very easy for something just to get down and start crawling off. They disappear. You would never see them. So whether they're able to cloak, I don't really know. Or are they just very good at hiding behind something, or getting low to the ground and running off, which would give them the impression of disappearing. But I don't think anybody in our group has had any, true experience with cloaking.
So what are some of the of any other, like experiences that you've had out there? Have you told me the majority of those, or is there anything else that stood out?
Well, like I said, we have our gifting area. We've had, you know, numerous, weird things happen out there with the fence, the eggs. Um, we have found prints there. We have casted prints there. I know a couple of years ago, I was in my favorite area in Hillsborough County and, doing research. And it's a swamp, so it's very muddy out there, and the cypress knees are horrific. You'll trip and fall and impale yourself in an instant. They're so annoying and they're pretty dangerous. But anyway, so we're out. I'm out with a bunch of researchers, and I come across two sets of, I know this is going to sound weird again, a little animal skull, like from an armadillo or a raccoon or a possum or something like that, and two little sticks shoved in the ground right behind it. So it forms a line. Now the sticks are not just like little straight sticks. These sticks are like very branchy, kind of like, like if you were to call a stick ornamental, that would be it. It's not, it's just very branchy. And I'm just looking at this and I'm like, okay, this is really weird. But I found two sets of those, two sets of, in the same area, two little skulls with two little sticks shoved in the ground right behind it. So it forms a line. And at the time, I was new to doing Bigfoot research, and I was like, that's really odd. Well, now, what I wish I would have done is dig it up, see if there is a body there, because people talk about, they think that Bigfoots are protectors of the forest or caretakers, whatever. So, what would they do if they came across a dead raccoon or something? Would they bury it as a memorial? Or maybe they did eat it and then they buried it themselves. But I wish I would have dug both of those up to see if there was a body there. And that's a really strange thing to say, but because people also wonder if Bigfoots bury their own.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
What about those structures? Some people think that there's a lot of communication that they have with the varied structures that they create, whether it be the small sticks in the ground or whether it be the larger X's on the ground. What have you concluded on the structure communication?
Yeah. So the areas that we investigate, the Green Swamp, Pasco County, Hillsborough County, all these parks and stuff like that, they're all connected together like one big corridor. So they can easily travel from one area to the next, depending on the food supply, depending on if it's hunting season, you know what I'm saying? In different areas, like I said, they're connected together as a corridor. In different areas, I'll find these little asterisk structures that are only like 2 feet off the ground, but they were made out of sticks that are 4 to 5 feet long. And so it just forms, it just looks like a little asterisk. And last year particularly, I think we found 6 of them within 2 months. So was that done by the same individual, just going from area to area? Is it a family? We don't know what it is. See, here in Florida, we don't have these big building materials, things that they could use to create these giant teepees or lean-to structures like you see in the Pacific Northwest. You know, our trees here are scrawny, they're thinner, they're more brittle. So, and we have palmetto palms. So the structures that we find in Florida are very different than what you would look for in the Pacific Northwest. You know, you may have a bunch of palmetto palms that kind of look like a teepee, you know. So it's a whole different game here in Florida, you know. So what was I going to say about that? I'm sorry.
Well, obviously the trees down, you know, when you have the row of trees down, most people have indicated that that is a message or a barrier of some sort.
Yes. And I mean, that's definitely what we, you know, felt on our trail in the Ocala National Forest, that was definitely stay away, get out. Those little asterisk structures, don't know, just maybe little markers that you just make while they go along. But they're usually by some kind of water source, like a little creek or something. Don't know. We do not find that many lean-to structures. I think I've been researching now for what, about 4 years, and I think we have only ever found 2 lean-to structures, so not that many. TP structures, they're smaller if you find them. I found a tiny one in a Myakka State Park that was maybe 1.5 feet tall, but it was very organized. And it, you know, when you think about, oh, it's small teepee structure, it's probably just a camper, you know, wanting to start a fire or something. No, this is in the middle of nowhere by a path. You're not going to have somebody camping out in the middle of nowhere along a dirt path in Myakka State Park, which is in Sarasota, Florida. It's really hot there. You don't need to be building any kind of fire. And again, it's made with tiny sticks because that's all there is around there. You know, in that area, there's no real big trees. Maybe there's some scrawny oak trees out there, but nothing substantial except little sticks. So I can see why I would find a small teepee structure that's 1.5 feet tall. Now, I have a researcher friend, his name's Paul Guffey, he's in Minnesota. He found an identical structure in Minnesota, and he sent me a picture of it, and I'm like, oh my God, this looks almost identical to what I found in Myakka State Park in Sarasota, Florida. So that confirmed more to me that, okay, this really was, Bigfoot related. But, they'll go along and they'll break palmetto palms in different directions, like the place we went yesterday when we did our research. We walked past this palmetto tree that we've seen in the past, and it just reminded us, because all the branches, the palm fronds, were broken off in different directions and in different ways. That's not normal. If a palmetto palm's going to break, it's going to break that way. It's not going to break that up and over and different directions. So, but that's what we have to deal with here. It's just very different. Or that looks like what I've seen. Or people will reach out to you and say, hey, your picture here looks like what I found in, Arizona or something like that. So it's really fascinating to see, things that are very similar to what we've seen here in Florida.
Suggested that maybe the wood knocks is a sound that's actually created within a Bigfoot's mouth rather than
Yes.
actually hitting on a tree. What do you
Correct.
think about that?
Yes. Yes. I actually went on an investigation with Stacy Brown Jr. and a bunch of his researchers and friends, and there was two people in the group who could make that loud mouth popping sound, and it did. It sounded exactly like a wood knock. At Dupuy, I think it was after I saw the orb, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, I heard what sounded like a baseball bat cracking. Just one. And now that may be a true wood knock, but I do believe that it's possible that it's not really a wood knock at times. Sometimes it may be the mouth popping. I mean, my friends could do it pretty loud. Those researchers did it pretty loud. I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. So if we could do it that loud, can you imagine them, making that kind of sound? Of course, it'd be louder for them. But yeah, I think it's definitely possible. Definitely.
Have you ever heard of the, like the chatter or the teeth clicking, that sort of sound?
Yes, I've heard the chattering sound in the Everglades when we were doing skunk ape research a couple of years ago. And we were walking down this trail, and it's a long trail, but it's surrounded by water. Everything in the Everglades is water, So, but this dry trail we were walking on, we're going along, and it did not sound like barred owls, because barred owls, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they make crazy sounds that actually sound like apes arguing or something, or talking or something. But this sounded like maybe like two Oriental people having an argument or talking to each other. It was like, and I'm like, what the heck is that out here? It's like, whoa. I mean, maybe we heard skunk ape, I don't know, but very different sound, which would be described as the gibberish talk. And it was in the Everglades.
Is it something like the Sierra sounds?
No, different.
Okay.
Different. Close, but maybe more high pitched. More high pitched, which that's why I'm like, it sounds like so higher pitched than the Sierra sounds.
Have you ever seen a UFO or a craft at this in similarity to a Bigfoot?
I have not seen a UFO during Bigfoot research, but I have seen two UFOs in my lifetime. I have seen two different kinds of crafts. In the Ocala National Forest, I know somebody, a researcher, who he used to go out by himself camping in the middle of the forest. And twice he has had an experience where he was woken up at night with this giant beam of light on him, on his tent, him in his tent. And it scared the daylights out of him, because he's in the middle of nowhere. There's no street lights out there. It's happened twice. He was afraid to look up, but it just scared him. But it happened twice to him. Now I have another researcher friend who is in the Green Swamp, and actually he was in a park that butts up to the Green Swamp. It's called Colt Creek. So he was camping out there with his camper, and he was out there for the week. He was leaving Colt Creek, pulled out of the park, going down the road, and he saw this blue bar of light flying above the trees. And he's like, what is that? And I'm like, it sounds like you saw a UFO. It was right above the trees, a blue bar of light, big, just moved extremely quick. Now, I have another friend of mine who's another researcher who had a weird experience out in the Green Swamp a couple months ago when he was out riding a bike. And it was a very foggy morning in the Green Swamp. He was on his electric bike. And he starts hearing what sounds like a school bell, like a bell ringing. And then he felt there was a static charge in the air, which if you have fog, that means it's humid or whatever. You're not going to have you should not be feeling any kind of static electricity out there. But he felt it when he was on his bike, and it really freaked him out. So he started just taking some pictures while he was riding. And one of his pictures, it looks like an alien in the trees with big black eyes. So again, we don't know what that is. It's just an extremely weird experience.
And this is the same area where there's some Bigfoot phenomena happening?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Very, very active area. Mm-hmm. So some people think that the Green Swamp, they consider it kind of like Skinwalker Ranch or something, because many researchers have had problems with, batteries dying, equipment doing weird things, like what we had, where we had that stick flying at us that we couldn't see, that we captured on film, the figure that was behind me. Now, another really weird story I'll tell you is that a couple of years ago, I was in the Green Swamp with my research team, and this is weird. This has happened twice to me, where I find a X structure. My phone is in my pocket. My phone is password protected and locked. Okay. I am walking up to a X structure that I found. And when I walk up to the X structure, my phone calls an ex-boyfriend of mine. That happened twice, 2 different times in the Green Swamp. 2 different ex-boyfriends, 2 different X structures. What's the odds of something like that happening? No, that's just, whoa, what is that about? And of course, we've had my phone has also played mysterious ringtones on my phone that I don't have set up on my phone. It just starts playing ringtones. Or it opens up like weather.com videos. And again, my phone is password protected, locked. So it would have had to do a lot of things in order to get in my phone, in order to bring up weather.com and pick a video. So we can't explain this kind of stuff, but we do experience strange things out there at times. We haven't had stuff happen lately, except for the giant orb in December at Dupuy. Also at Dupuy, the next night, we went to another campground to check out, set up our equipment, we're watching. And I was getting kind of bored. And so I told Mike, I said, let's go take a little walk. So we just walk out in the middle of the field, and we look, and I have my thermal camera with me. And we look over to this one area, and we see this orb that's about the size of a softball or baseball, kind of like what I saw the night before. And this thing is floating in the woods back and forth. It's like, it's doing like this. It's just going back and forth, back and forth. Again, no fireflies that night. Back and forth. And Mike's like, there's somebody over there in the woods. And it looked like somebody had a flashlight and they were walking through the woods or looking for something. And so I look at my thermal camera, nothing there. Can't see anything there, but with our naked eye, we could see this orb just going back and forth. And Mike's like, no, there's got to be someone there. There's somebody there with a freaking light. And I'm like, no, there isn't. There's nothing there, Mike. I said, here, look at the thermal. There is nobody there. And yeah, we can't explain that either. I know, I think it was that night or maybe the night before, Mike had left some little, he's always like gifting, you know, so he had these little mini Reese's cups that he put on a bench. He put 5 of them on the bench just for the heck of it, you know. The next morning we go back there to check it out. All the Reese's cups are gone, no wrappers, and there's a mushroom that was left in its place. So, you know, we don't know what did that. Personally, we think it had to probably be a Bigfoot of some sort or a skunk ape, you know, because we believe we have both in the state, Bigfoots and skunk apes.
What is the
And
difference between the two?
the difference is, you know, based upon the reports, sighting reports, you know, Bigfoots in Florida seem to be like where we are, Tampa area, which is central, and up to North Florida. That's where you have the typical, you know, 6 to 9 foot tall creature reports, you know, big creatures, hairy, and they have 5 toes, right? Well, the skunk ape reports are different. They tend to be creatures that are 5 to 7 feet tall. Reportedly, they stink very badly. They're much thinner, leaner, which makes sense because, you know, in Florida, you know, the further you south you go, the hotter it gets. So, you know, in Mayaca is very hot area. And the Everglades is completely miserable at this time of year because of their heat and their humidity. So a big giant creature, you know, big muscles and a lot of bulk, could never survive down in the Everglades because of the heat and the humidity. It has to be a smaller, leaner creature, just like a deer. The deer in the Everglades are much smaller than the deer you'd find in North Florida. You know, same thing. You black bears, very thin, almost like dogs. Because again, the heat and the food source, you know, the food source probably isn't that great for them. But there's a lot of, you know, deer and stuff like that out there that they can eat.
What about facial features? Are they the same, basic?
They're different, a little, you know, some people say they kind of look like orangutans, and they very well could be some orangutans, but I don't know if there's any orangutans that are 6, 7 feet tall. Don't know about that. But they also have 4 toes. The skunk apes are reported to have 4 toes and not 5 toes, and their toes are longer. So probably so they can climb trees, because in the Everglades, you know, where are you going to go, you know, to sleep at? You're either on a hammock, which is a island of trees that's in the middle of the water, or they have to be in the trees. So they probably have those longer toes so they can climb trees. They can grip better, you know. That's just my theory. But you know, the first like real report of a skunk ape, I think it had like a white stripe, kind of like a skunk. And that's, you know, some people think that that's why they're called skunk apes, and other people think it's because of the smell. They smell like a skunky, wet dog, nasty smell. I have not smelled anything like that yet. But the biggest difference is the size and 4 toes for skunk apes. And
I
so
see.
we do both Bigfoot and skunk ape research, depending on the area we're going to. You know, when we go to the Everglades, when we go down to meet up with David Shealy, who's a skunk ape expert down there, you know, we're definitely doing skunk ape research there. We're looking for that kind of thing. We're going out, you know, looking for prints, looking for anything unusual. But again, it's all water down there, and everything in the Everglades is out to kill you. So because you have all kinds of, you know, pythons and Florida panthers and just other deadly snakes and hogs, and you know, just like I said, everything is out to kill you down there. It's one of the most dangerous places I've ever investigated before. And the gators and crocodiles, so I can't leave those out. So it's very interesting, but that seems like what the differences are between a skunk ape and a Bigfoot. And I don't think they migrate at all. I don't think they need to, because our weather is, you know, of course it's hot in the summertime, but in the wintertime, you know, we have pretty mild winters that are very enjoyable. And they have a, you know, year-round supply of food available to them. So I don't necessarily think they migrate. They may migrate a particular distance to look for something in particular, but other than that, I don't think they're migrating to like North Florida. I think they just kind of stay in their general area. You know, the Everglades is 1.5 million acres. It's a huge, huge place. Lots of places for it to hide and to go. So David Shealy had his infamous skunk ape sighting on July 8th of the year 2000 at 7:19 p.m. It was incredibly hot, you know, miserable out there. So, you know, he filmed it, and right now you can see that video. It's a 2-minute clip of the full video that's available on the Smithsonian magazine channel on YouTube. And it shows a skunk ape moving through the sawgrass, and he filmed it, right? So most people around the world, a lot of critics and stuff, believe that that was a hoax. It was a guy in a costume. But they make those assumptions without knowing anything about the area or the conditions, you know. So in December, me and my team decided to do a study, and we called it the David Shealy Skunk Ape Sighting Research Study. So we did a 3-month study where we went down there a couple times. We tried to perform reenactments of the skunk ape, what the skunk ape did and where it went. Because David Shealy took us out to the site of where he had his sighting at. And so we tried to replicate what the skunk ape did. And what's interesting is that, like, the rainy season runs from, I think, May to November or December. And so when I first went down to meet up with David Shealy in December, and he took me out on a ATV to the location of his sighting. At that time in December, there was still water out there. There was at least 1.5 feet of water. And the only way we could easily get to the site was on an ATV. So that tells you how much water in December there was. Typically in July, there's at least 1 to 2 feet of water, if not more, everywhere. So we were doing the reenactments in the dry season. We did the reenactment in February, and we did another one in March. So the first reenactment was team members Mike Aguilar and Chris Hensley. They went out there. They tried to run to do the exact same thing the skunk ape did. They couldn't do it. They could not do it because it was incredibly muddy. The grass was thick or clumpy, or at times it was up over their shoulders. We couldn't even see them. It was that tall. You're out there, there's holes in the ground, there's logs, there's sticks, there's gators, there's snakes, and you can't see what you're stepping in or where you're going to. So they, kind of like they were trying to go down little game trails and not just run the path. And so, they were totally exhausted from the experience. They were like, there's no way that was a guy in a costume in a suit doing that. So then in March, I brought down, we went back down to the Everglades, and I brought another friend of ours his name's Thomas Brandon. He is a long distance trail runner, and he's used to running in different terrains out there. So we had him try to do the reenactment. And he was able to run some, but he was mostly walking for the exact same reason, is that, it was the dirt, the mud, the holes. You can't see where you're going. So found himself taking the path of least resistance. Let me step over here because it's a little clearer. Okay, let me run over here because it's more open, So, he did a better job of trying to run it, but he couldn't consistently run it. And then he didn't remember to move his arms like the skunk ape did, right? So when he was done, he even said it was much, 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 much harder than he ever expected it to be. And so, based upon that, I went online, did a bunch of research to see what the conditions were in the Everglades, because we're trying to prove to people that, yes, it was really a skunk ape that he filmed, that there's no way that it was a guy in a suit. So I was able to find some old data concerning the temperature at the time, the humidity at the time. I think the average was 90 degrees, 75% humidity, which means that the feel-like temperature was 109.5 degrees. So you're dealing with that kind of heat, humidity, and you're trying to run straight through the sawgrass marsh, which is nothing but water, because it's at least 1 to 2 feet of water. If you're wearing a suit and you're running through water, you're not going to move very fast, and it's almost impossible to run that distance through the water wearing a hot, heavy, hairy suit at that time of year when it's what it feels like 109 degrees out there. But this skunk ape is just moving straight through. He's not looking down to see, oh, is there a snake? Is there a gator? Where should I go next? No, he's just plowing straight through the sawgrass marsh, and he's running a great distance. David thinks that he was running after a deer, because before he saw his sighting, he saw a deer moving through the same area. So he thinks the skunk ape was chasing after the deer. So, we're just trying to prove that was the intent, the objective of our study, is to prove that, yes, it did happen. David did see a skunk ape. It really was one. But that's our opinion, but that's based upon the research that we've done. But most people, no one has ever done it. Even David Shealy said that we are the only research team that has ever tried to do a study about what he saw. So I think that's pretty amazing. I'm honored that we did that for him. David's a very good friend of ours. And we do consider him a member of our research team. my group is the first group that he ever joined for Florida Bigfoot research. He's never belonged to a group before, but he's a member of our group. We were the first ones that he joined because he's very impressed with what we're doing out there on a weekly basis. I mean, we are out doing research every single weekend, whether it's the whole team or only a couple members can go out, or maybe just me. If my team can't go out, I go out by myself. I don't have a problem with that. But that's how serious and dedicated we are, about Bigfoot and Skunk Ape research in our state. We want to prove that, yes, they do exist in our state. Nobody believes, not many people even believe we have Bigfoots or skunk apes here. Every time you talk about Bigfoot, they're like, oh, no, they're just in the Pacific Northwest. No, they're not. Florida is number 3 for the most reported sightings based upon the BFRO, but that's reported sightings. Number 1 is Washington, of course. Number 2, California. Number 3 is Florida. So that says something, about our states, but we're trying to prove that they do exist here. And this is why. This is what we found, and hopefully we will get a Bigfoot or a skunk ape on film someday. So I put together a documentary. It's like a 20-minute documentary that's on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, which is Mid-Florida Bigfoot Research Group. You can watch it. It has, it shows the data that I collected. It shows the interviews that I conducted with David. You can watch us ride on the ATV, so you get an idea of what it looks like out there with all the water when you're trying to move through the water. It shows, bits and pieces of our reenactment of the guys running through the sawgrass marsh. And of course, it has our conclusion on it. So.